Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Clark in the Center for Weight Loss Success. And tonight on Losing Weight USA, we're going to talk about food labels. There's all kinds of things on food labels. Certainly one of the more important things is the nutrition facts, that little box that's on pretty much all food items. But then there's all kinds of other things on food labels that can be confusing as kind of what do they actually mean. So we're going to go through some of these terms. And I would encourage you, just practice looking at labels, realize that a lot of the things on labels is just marketing. They're trying to get you to buy something. All right, here's the official welcome. Welcome to Losing Weight USA. This is real-time answers your weight loss questions, as well as some of the latest updates. A little bit of expert advice as well. It gives you direct access not only to me, but you should be receiving the health tips and recipes via the membership portal. Each webinar is going to last about 30 minutes or so. If you have questions, just type them into the chat boxes during the presentation. We'll get to them at the end. We'll typically make time permit. If you think of something once we're all done, just give us a yell here at the Center for Weight Loss Success. The email is success@cfws.com. Phone number 757-873-1880. All right, let's get started, and we're going to flip the screen here. There we go. All right, so food labels. The FDA requires certain things to be placed on a food label, and these are going to be located in the nutrition facts box. So in theory, the nutrition facts box should be a very, it gives you kind of this basic information that is factual. Okay. Now, on a food label, though, there can be all kinds of other things, all kinds of other claims on the label. Some of these things do require FDA approval. Many of them do not. And just realize that most of what's on a food label is marketing. But we'll hit the nutrition facts box. What's got to be on there? What to really look for? So this is really kind of the important piece that's on the food label. Now realize too, how many times do I say is that the best foods have no labels, meaning that we buy them fresh, we prepare them, we take care of them, that's how we eat them. But living in the real world, okay, is that there's going to be things we eat that have food labels on them. So there are certain things the FDA requires on a food label. So it's called the nutrition facts box. Okay, so what does it require? It requires serving size. What are the servings per container? It requires it to be the calories per serving as well as the calories from fat. Then it also has to give some nutrient amounts per serving and some of the percent daily values. And it has to do this for fat. And it'll list saturated fat as well as trans fat, which we've talked about recently. It'll talk about cholesterol, has to have it listed on there, has to have listed the amount of sodium in it, and the total carbohydrate, the dietary fiber, the sugar, and then also sugar alcohols. And then there are four other nutrients that are just listed as a percent of daily values. And that's vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, and iron. And then finally, at the end, it's going to have the actual ingredients. Okay, anything that's used as an ingredient has to be listed on the ingredients. Realize that they're listed in decreasing order by weight. So whatever the most prominent ingredient is in that is going to come first. And that's kind of listed on down there. And once you get after the first half dozen things, typically they're relatively small amounts of these things. All right. Now, there is a new proposal. It hasn't completely taken effect yet. And a lot of these things, when they change them, often occur over years and years and years, is that they'll have, okay, 10, not that long, but a few years from now, this is what the nutrition label needs to look like. So I have kind of listed there the current label versus the proposed label. And what it does, it just changed some of the prominence. The same things are listed on there, but they have changed kind of the prominence on there. They also have now listed vitamin D is going to be placed on there too. So, but it's really looking at the prominence of certain things. They're making the calories per serving go up, and also want people to realize how many servings are actually in this container. Because sometimes people would think that, gee, it's on the nutrition facts, and they're typically listed as per serving, but people wouldn't realize that a container may actually have 3, 4, 6 servings in it. You know, a typical example of that is the 16-ounce Cokes, 16-ounce drinks in there. You know, we think of them as single servings. But actually, if you looked at the label on there, up until recently, they changed this, I think. But up until recently, it said, gee, this is 2 servings. Most people didn't actually realize that. And it was like, oh, it's because it's made as a single serving. You know, screw it, you drink it type of thing. All right, so they made calories a little more prominent, how many servings per the container, and they just made it a little bit easier to read. So they kind of, you know, they change it around a little bit. But basically, the same things are also going to be on it. Now, the bigger thing is kind of what I'll call the marketing that's on most food labels. And so most processed foods that you buy, you go to the grocery store, they're going to have that nutrition facts. And it's always a good idea to look at the nutrition facts. And make sure you're looking at, you know, what are the calories per serving? Probably the number one thing I encourage people to look at is what's the carbohydrate? Because if you're going to count something, count your carbohydrate. Look at what's the protein in there. But typically for most things that are labeled, there's not going to be that much protein in it because protein foods typically don't come with labels. Meat, seafood, cheese. Well, cheese does. Egg, you know, there is on the box there. But anyway. So now there's all kinds of other things that are on the label, and some of we list them as claims, okay? And so they'll often have, when it talks about calories, it may say low calorie versus reduced calorie versus calorie free. Those things have very real meanings to it. The FDA has set this up. What does low calorie mean? Anything that's less than 40 calories per serving can be low calorie. What does reduced calorie mean? Reduced calorie basically means it's 25% lower in calories than the regular product. So if the regular product has 100 calories in it, 25% lower would be 25 calories less. So that means, okay, we're talking about 75 calories. Anything then that normally would have 100 calories and it only has 75 calories, it can be called reduced calorie. I just realized that a lot of things may be fairly high calorie. And now we say it's reduced calorie. It doesn't necessarily mean it's low calorie. And calorie free doesn't necessarily mean there's 0 calories in it. Basically, calorie free is anything that has less than 5 calories per serving. Now, a classic example here is the little, you know, when you buy Splenda in a big bag. Typically, a serving of Splenda is just one of, a little packet size. And there is less than 5 calories per serving. So they can call it calorie free. But technically, it's not calorie free. If you had a cup of Splenda, it has somewhere about a little over 90 calories in it. You just realize it's not really calorie free. But an amount that's in a typical serving is less than 5 calories. Therefore, it can be called calorie free. Same thing with a lot of sugar free or calorie free gums and things like that. They're not truly calorie free. Okay. Sodium. Okay, so we see sodium labeled all the time, sodium talked about all the time. So what do these things actually mean? Low sodium means it has less than 140 milligrams per serving. Very low sodium has to have less than 35 milligrams per serving. So we're talking about fairly, those are pretty low. Reduced sodium means it's has 25% less than the regular product. And again, similar to the calories thing, it's going to be 25% less. If it's 25% less, it can be called reduced. Sodium free, kind of a similar thing as the calories. If it's less than 5 milligrams, it can be sodium free. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's sodium free, but less than 5 milligrams is a tiny amount. How about the fat claims? You'll see this on all kinds of different, there's all kinds of different claims in there. I listed them out from low fat, fat free, low saturated fat, less saturated fat, reduced saturated fat free, trans fat free. And then the next slide, right, we'll talk about cholesterol. And it goes into all this. So there's lots of claims about fat. You just realize they actually do have a definition of these things. And these are regulated by the FDA. Low fat means it has to be less than 3 grams of fat per serving. Fat free, less than 0.5 gram of fat per serving. Again, that does not mean it's truly fat free. 0.5 gram, and it's a typical serving. It depends on how many servings you have and things like that. So you have to keep that in mind. You may have to do some fairly simple math, but still you may have to do a little math there. Low saturated fat, and it's specifically talking about saturated fat, means there's less than 1 gram of saturated fat per serving, or less than 0.5 grams of trans fat per serving. We're going to talk about trans fat in a little bit. Less saturated fat means there's 25% or less than the typical, okay, or 25% less of the trans fats on the regular product. Reduced saturated fat, again, kind of goes, so you'll see a pattern kind of developing here. It has 25% less of saturated fat in a serving than the regular product. Saturated fat free, and okay, less than 0.5 gram of saturated fat. Trans fat free, anything less than 0.5 grams of trans fat. And trans fat is one of those tricky things because it only takes a small amount of trans fat to potentially cause some problems, and they can still be called trans fat free. Cholesterol, kind of similar type of thing. You can have low cholesterol, reduced cholesterol, cholesterol free. And again, there are different meanings for these things. Anything that's low cholesterol has less than 20 milligrams cholesterol per serving and has to have less than 2 grams of saturated fat per serving. So there's a little combination thing. Not only the cholesterol, also the saturated fat it looks at. Now, just to recall, we've talked about this before, but cholesterol, again, has no calories in it. So, there are no calories to cholesterol. And I'm not a big proponent of counting your cholesterol that you're eating because your body makes most of the cholesterol that it utilizes. And most of the cholesterol in your body is what your body makes, not what you eat. But no matter what, things that are low cholesterol is less than 20 milligrams of cholesterol. Reduced cholesterol means there's at least 25% less cholesterol than the regular product. And cholesterol free means there's less than 2 milligrams of cholesterol per serving. Okay? And they also do take some trans fats and saturated fat in combination with that too, but still basically is the low cholesterol there. Other food label claims, we'll often see this on meat and poultry. What's lean? What does lean mean? What is extra lean? What does it actually mean when they say that? Lean meats is anything less than 10 grams of fat per serving and less than 4.5 grams of saturated fat, and we combine it with the trans fat per serving. But as far as meats go, meats don't really contain trans fats. So trans fat is a man-made thing. And also lean has to be less than 95 milligrams of cholesterol per serving. Again, I care less about the cholesterol in there is. Well, I shouldn't say care less. That's an oversimplification. So lean, basically relatively smaller amounts of fat, less than 10 grams of fat per serving. Extra lean cuts that in half. So it's less than 5 grams of fat per serving and less than 2 grams of saturated fat and a trans fat and less than 95 milligrams of cholesterol per serving. So lean, extra lean. Lean, less than 10 grams. Extra lean, less than 5 grams. Fiber. We talk about fiber quite a bit, and you'll see it on labels all the time because it's a good marketing ploy. What is high fiber? Anything greater than 5 grams of fiber per serving can be labeled high fiber. Good source of, which is different. Good source of means it has between 2.5 and 4.9 grams of fiber per serving. So good source of isn't quite as high as the high fiber. Sugar, And what is sugar-free? What does it mean? And I mentioned, I kind of alluded to this earlier. It means it has less than half a gram of sugar per serving. Again, technically, if you have more than multiple servings of something, subsequently then it's truly not sugar-free. But it still is a fairly low amount there. Now, lots of other things can be placed on labels. Some of them have, significant meaning to them. Other ones have minimal meaning to them. Okay? When something is labeled as light, it literally can be as simple as it's a lighter color, or it can be something more significant in that, hey, it actually is 1/3 fewer calories than the regular product. So again, we'll go back to that 100-calorie example. 1/3 lower means that'd be 33% lower. It has 67 calories. So 1/3 fewer. That doesn't mean it's 1/3 of the calories. 1/3 fewer calories. It also has to be light. It has to have half the fat of the regular product. Or again, could be light in color or just texture too. Could be just lighter in texture. So you can call something light, like light brown sugar. Light brown sugar has nothing to do with how much sugar in it. It's just the color and the texture. Or something can be light if the sodium content is reduced 50% in a low-fat, low-calorie food. What about healthy? We see this on labels all the time. What does it mean? Well, something is healthy. Again, the healthiest food have no labels on them. So healthy means it's low in fat, low in saturated fat, low in trans fat, low in cholesterol, low in sodium, and has at least 10% of the daily value of vitamins A, C, iron, calcium, protein, and fiber. So those things can be healthy then. What is a good source of? Okay, a good source of something means it provides at least 10% of a daily value of a particular vitamin or nutrient serving. Now, when we talk about daily values, I didn't mention this in the kind of the nutrition facts label. When they talk about daily vitamins, we talk more about this when we talk about vitamins, but the daily value or daily recommended value is actually the absolute smallest number that will prevent a deficiency. It has nothing to do with what's an optimal amount. Those are completely two different things. It's what's the absolute smallest amount that can help to prevent a deficiency of that particular nutrient, vitamin, in most people. Again, it's not even in all people. It's in most people. All right, so good source of means it provides at least 10% of that. Okay. High in, what if something is high in something? What does it mean? It provides at least 20% of the daily value of that specific nutrient. So for calcium, 20% of the daily value of calcium or vitamin A or whatever it is. Now, a lot of labels will have health claims on them. And basically it means that there's a written claim that describes a relationship between the substance, the food, okay, and a disease or health-related condition. And this does require FDA approval because there has to be significant scientific evidence, or what they refer to as significant scientific agreement, or SSA, to support that health claim. Like things that helps lower cholesterol. Okay, something helps lower cholesterol. You'll see this on oatmeal, you'll see it on Cheerios, you'll see it on whatever. Okay, there has to be significant scientific agreement that it'll support this health claim. All right. Now the FDA rates the level of that scientific evidence. Then, if there's lots of evidence, basically they rate it as an A. There's no disclaimer needed on, so they don't have to actually disclaim something. B means they're supportive but not conclusive. And when it does this, it's not necessarily conclusive. It'll have to have a disclaimer on it, meaning the FDA is not, test, you'll see this written on all kinds of different things. The FDA has not tested this. They don't actually put their seal of approval on. Then C is limited but not conclusive. So the scientific evidence level C, limited, not conclusive. Yes, it requires a disclaimer. And then there's a level D, which means basically very little scientific evidence supporting the claim. And yes, the disclaimer is required on that. So, and you see this on lots of supplements out there, kind of herbal supplements, things like that. But you also see it on a lot of food products too. Then there's what's called structure or function claims. Now this is how does a substance actually affect the function of the body? And something like build strong bones. Okay, so now we're talking about, hey, this thing actually is, working on a structure, function of the body. So consumers are much more likely to see this because it's typically kind of all over the place. Now, unlike the health claims, structure and function claims require no FDA approval, and they require no review of the scientific evidence. They can basically just say it. It helps lower costs. Well, that one's wrong. Structure and function, that doesn't matter. Build strong bones. Okay, so kind of milk. Building strong bones. So structure and function type of things. So they may or may not be then scientifically accurate, and just realize that they do have to have a disclaimer for any type of supplement. Actual food products don't actually require a disclaimer. You can pretty much say anything you want to in a food product. So just to wind this down, kind of some tips for success. Practice reading labels. Kind of learn to read and understand them. Again, the most important one is the nutrition facts. Look at the calories, look at the protein, look at the carbohydrates. You're going to count one thing and count your carbohydrate. You need to practice this. Get used to it. Just kind of when you're walking through the grocery store, just pick something up and just say, hey, what is that? Okay, and then kind of looking back at, hey, is this something that would be healthy or not? Because on the label, it's probably going to tell you it's the healthiest food ever. Okay, no, that may not be true. So again, daily values I mentioned earlier, generally determined to prevent disease, not to give optimal health. So one of the biggest things is let the buyer beware. Okay? Just realize that most of what's on a food label is just marketing, and that's it. If you're going to count something, how many times do I say this? Count your carbohydrate, because that's the biggest bang for the buck, especially from a weight perspective. Manipulating insulin levels, kind of want to keep that down, lower your insulin levels. All right, questions. Again, probably the biggest thing is to practice doing this. Walk down the grocery store, I'll just pick up things. Maybe you're not even going to buy it. Just pick things up and just start looking at the labels and just kind of have that thought process of going in there. Is this something you'd even consider eating? Should this be something that I should be buying or not? Again, the best foods have absolutely no labels on them. Okay, you're going to buy it, you prepare it, fix it yourself. All right. Very good. If you think of questions, you know where to find us here. Give us a yell at the Center for Weight Loss Success. You should be stopping by. Get your body comp done. I encourage us all the time. You want to make sure that you're losing fatty tissue, not losing that lean body mass. You should be receiving the health tips and weekly recipes. Tune in each Tuesday, 6 o'clock for the next webinar. Watch your email for the invite and link. And remember, it's your life. Make it a healthy one. Have a good evening, everyone. Take care.